Well, in 2018, Zimbabweans will go to the polls for the first time without former President Robert Mugabe on the ballot. CGTN's Farai Mwaktuya gives us an insight into the electoral race now that the veteran leader has departed.
Previous elections here have seen the ruling party declaring a Mugabe and Mugabe only, while the opposition has been saying Mugabe must go. Now that he has, this next election is expected to be less about personalities and more about the issues. And they include jobs, particularly for the youths, unlocking new investment, stabilizing prices, and improving social service delivery. New President Emmerson Mnangagwa will look to capitalize on the positive sentiment towards his cost-cutting and anti-graft policies. He's also reunited ZANU-PF and will count on its powerful machinery to mobilize votes. An opposition coalition seems to be in disarray. Morgan Tsvangirai is officially the MDC Alliance's presidential candidate, but he's been unwell for the past year and has spent most of it in South Africa getting treatment. The alliance is divided on who would step in should Tsvangirai fail to run. President Mnangagwa has promised a free, fair and credible election. All eyes will be on him to see if he delivers on that, and on Zimbabweans to see in which direction they choose to steer their nation. Farai Mwaktuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's get more insights on what to look forward to in 2018 from CGTN's Angelo Coppola, who's standing by for us in Johannesburg, Adel Mahrui, who's joining us from Cairo, and here in Nairobi, Voldi Karese will be live for us in our Nairobi studios. But first, let's begin from the northern tip of the continent. Adel Mahrui, security is clearly among the top concerns for Egypt and the region. Adel, what should we expect as the year progresses?
Well, security continues to be a priority for the Egyptian nation. Egypt starts 2018 continuing an emergency state all over the country as terror attacks have shook it, particularly after we've seen a significant shift in the strategy of militant groups, shifting their attacks from that used to focus on judicial and military police officials and security troops to civilians. They have attacked worship house, they have attacked churches. Bomb explosions have been reported in at least 3 churches since the New Year celebrations last year till this week. And also, on the other hand, we've seen another major escalation when there has been no further segregation between Christians and Muslims in terms of being targeted. Just last month, what happened in North Sinai after militants opened fire on worshippers in a mosque on a Friday, killing hundreds and injuring more, is a significant shift that Egypt in 2018 will be dealing with a different mindset of militant insurgency that is targeting almost everyone in the country. Securing the entire country with the same strong grip that Egypt has continuing is still a challenge that Egypt needs support. It needs technological support and advancement to its troops. It needs training. There is a lot of requirements to maintain this security flow. But hopefully with the reviving of the economic status of the country and the return of tourists, particularly Russian tourists that are expected to come starting February, Egypt will have more finances, it will have more job opportunities, and according to many analysts, that will help in tuning down both the insurgency recruitment process and the threats of these attacks.
Well, Northern Africa starting off on a positive note, clearly there. Voldi, 2017, Kenya's election was a major highlight there, the Supreme Court ruling, including the economic downturn as a result for Kenya. So what should we expect in East Africa in 2018?
Well, Beatrice, it seems as though the protracted presidential elections is something we'll be dragging with us into 2018, with the opposition here in Kenya swearing to continue civil disobedience and says it will swear in Raila Odinga next week as the people's president. Now, these threats are certainly something that the government is taking seriously. The other stories we're looking at in East Africa is, of course, the ongoing humanitarian crisis in South Sudan. Despite a renewed ceasefire being declared just last week, ethnic clashes continue there. Our correspondents in Mogadishu and in Uganda obviously looking at the effects of the withdrawal of peacekeeping forces, the AMISOM forces from Somalia. 1,000 soldiers were meant to have departed the country yesterday.
All right. Of course, security is still remaining at the forefront there for Eastern Africa. Well, let's take a look now at Southern Africa. Angelo, South Africa recently witnessed changes at the helm of the ruling African National Congress Party. So how is this expected to impact the country throughout the year?
Well, Beatrice, many are hoping that Ramaphosa's election to head of the ANC will make a difference. The win by Ramaphosa in mid-December saw the rand strengthen against the US dollar to 9-month highs. The markets didn't really react because most of the traders were on holiday already at that stage. But the challenge now is that Zuma still is the country's leader. On the other hand, of course, Ramaphosa needs to get business and government talking to each other, but his hands are tied until Zuma leaves. That's according to some analysts we spoke to. On an economic level, the ratings agencies haven't made their position clear on Ramaphosa's appointment, but they're most likely going to be waiting to hear what he has to say on the 13th of January when he presents that annual ANC commemorative speech. That's a couple of weeks before the opening of Parliament speech, which Zuma will be delivering this time round, it appears, as it stands at the moment. And then, of course, the national budget speech, which happens towards the end of February, early March, where Finance Minister Gigaba is going to be talking about what he plans to do in terms of the country's finances. So there's a lot happening in the next 10 weeks or so, but there's still calls for Zuma to step down so Ramaphosa can get a chance to stabilize the country politically and economically. But at the moment, Zuma doesn't appear to be in a hurry to either resign or retire just yet. So South Africa is in a bit of state of flux at the moment, Beatrice.
Right, Angelo, economic and political situations there in Southern Africa. And back to you, Adele. Libya remains a concern for North Africa, particularly since 2011. Should we expect any significant progress towards stability for Libya in 2018?
Elections are the key point for the Libyans, and so far they seem to be persistent on holding full legislative and presidential elections before the year ends. Now there are many obstacles still on the ground. Security is one major threat that threatens the entire electoral process and the move to have a unified government. There is still political division, and that will be more apparent once we see the Eastern Parliament that was previously recognized internationally and is expected to form an elections law that will regulate these elections. Once that happens, divisions might erupt, particularly that it has strong opposition from the Western powers in Tripoli. How will they overcome that part? It's still not clear. But if things move slowly and small steps, this is what many experts are recommending for Libya, to see small steps toward finalizing the process of having presidential and legislative elections. Once that happens, Libya and Libya manage to hold elections, then all sanctions we've seen on Libya will be lifted. Its army, its police will be empowered, will be equipped with advanced arms so that it can maintain security. There will be an internationally recognized government. So it's a big dream for Libya and the world, especially those countries in North Africa that have suffered from the instability in Libya. But it's still a big question about will Libyans be willing to put aside all their differences and go directly toward these elections to have a better future or a new government establishment.
Right. Voldy, we have seen some sort of closure, though, to the Kenyan presidential election and to the Liberian election as well at the close of 2017. But DR Congo still remains on very flimsy ground. What can we expect there in 2018?
Absolutely, Beatrice. Trouble is expected to continue well into this year as anti-government protests intensify. At least 7 people were killed on Sunday, more than 100 arrested as religious groups and opposition took to the streets demanding the president's resignation. Now, you'll know President Joseph Kabila has been delaying elections there. They were meant to happen in 2016. They haven't. He's been in power since 2001, and it seems as though people's patience is running out. A highlight, I think, for the DRC will be whether those elections take place in December of this year.
Right. Voldy, of course, we will see whether those elections in the DRC continue or will take place this year. Angela, Botswana and Zimbabwe are also slated to hold elections at some point during this year. We did see a smooth transition, though, in Angola. Do we expect any surprises there?
Well, Botswana, as you know, is a fairly stable country there politically and economically. It's got a small population. Diamonds are the biggest revenue generator, so that's fairly stable. The elections have been free and fair in the past, and it's unlikely to be any different next time around. The fact that the incumbent stood down as per the Constitution is good news for the country and for the Constitution. And as far as we can tell, the political environment is conducive to an open democracy. So we're not expecting any surprises there. But as you heard earlier, Zimbabwe, on the other hand, is balanced on a bit of a knife's edge. Many analysts are suggesting that Mnangagwa has an opportunity to create an environment for solid and fair elections, but others are a little more skeptical. Many hope that there won't be any election interference and that they'll be watching the build-up to those elections for clues as to what's going to actually happen on election day. Locals have memories of what happened during the last elections and their manipulation that took place and in terms of the results then. So Mnangagwa and his cabinet have to show their resolve in doing the right thing by the country and by the voters. Of course, the economic environment will also affect how the elections play out. So Mnangagwa is making all the right noises at the moment to attract that investment into the country, Beatrice. But we'll wait and see.
Indeed, we'll wait and see there in Zimbabwe and Botswana. Angelo Coppola joining us there from Johannesburg. Adel Mahrui joining us from Cairo, and the views from Volta Caressa here in Nairobi. To you all, thank you very much for your participation.